Elias Drake stepped off the shuttle, his boots crunching softly against the pale crystal floor of Zephora's landing platform. The air shimmered with a faint golden light, making everything around him look both real and unreal. Towering spires of translucent metal stretched into the sky, reflecting colors that no human eye had names for. It was a world that seemed alive, yet strangely silent, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something important to happen. Elias adjusted the strap of his satchel. Inside, carefully wrapped, was the gift he had spent months preparing. The human delegation had doubted him at first. The aliens won't understand, they had said. They won't care about your gesture. But Elias knew better. Humans had a way of touching others in ways no machine or weapon could. This gift was simple, yet powerful. It was a bridge, a message written not with words, but with feelings. He walked toward the palace gates, flanked by 2 Zephoran guards. They were unlike any creatures he had seen. Tall and graceful, their bodies shimmered with a soft metallic hue. Their eyes, large and dark, reflected intelligence and curiosity. They made no sound as they moved, their steps as silent as shadows. Elias felt the weight of their gaze, yet he did not falter. He had come for one purpose: to meet Queen Larintha. The palace doors opened before him, revealing a vast hall bathed in light. The ceiling seemed endless, a dome of crystal that bent and fractured the golden sunlight into thousands of colors. The walls were smooth, adorned with patterns that pulsed gently as if breathing. Elias's breath caught. No description, no photograph could have prepared him for this place. At the far end of the hall sat the queen, Larintha. Elias had only seen her in holograms sent across space, but even through the flickering images her presence had been undeniable. Now, standing before her, he could feel the power radiating from her. She was larger than humans in frame, yet elegant, every movement precise and deliberate. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, and her eyes, deep pools of amber, seemed to see everything at once. Around her, the court watched in silence, their attention unbroken. Elias swallowed and stepped forward. The gift rested in his hands, wrapped in simple earth cloth, tied with a thread of blue silk. "Your Majesty," he said, voice steady despite the pounding of his heart, "I bring a gift from Earth, a small token of respect from my people to you." The court murmured softly. The sound was unusual, almost like a ripple across water. Elias did not know if it was approval or disbelief, but he kept his focus on the queen. Larintha tilted her head slightly, her gaze narrowing as she examined him. She did not speak. Her silence was absolute, commanding, yet strangely not cold. Elias held out the gift, his hand steady. "It is different," he said. "It is not gold or jewels. It is not a weapon. It is something that shows who we are, what we value." The queen's eyes did not leave his face. Elias could feel the weight of her attention pressing on him. It was as if she could see through the fabric of his being, past the suit, past the nerves, and into the very intentions of his mind. He straightened his back and held the gift higher. "It is something humans have learned to value above all else: connection, trust, and understanding." A silence stretched through the hall. Even the guards seemed to hold their breath. For a moment, Elias wondered if he had overstepped, if this small gesture would be seen as an insult. Then slowly he lowered the gift and bowed his head. "I offer it with hope, Your Majesty. Hope that one day our species may walk together not as strangers but as allies." The queen's gaze shifted, focusing now on the small package. The court leaned forward ever so slightly, as though drawn by an invisible force. Larintha rose from her throne with measured grace. Her movements were smooth, almost flowing, yet every step carried authority. She approached Elias, silent and imposing, until she stood mere feet away. Elias felt a shiver of anticipation. This was the moment he had trained for, the moment that could change humanity's place in the galaxy. He extended the gift toward her, palms open. The queen's hand hovered above it. Her fingers were long, delicate, tipped with a faint glow. She did not touch it. She did not speak. She simply stood, staring at the gift, and in that silence, Elias felt 1,000 thoughts pass through her mind. Minutes, or perhaps seconds, time felt strange here, passed. The court waited, rigid and silent. Elias took a small step back, his pulse quickening. He had done all he could. The rest was up to her. Then, unexpectedly, she tilted her head slightly, a gesture so subtle that many of the humans would have missed it. It was not approval, not yet. But it was curiosity, and that was enough. Elias lowered himself into a respectful kneel, keeping his eyes on the Queen. "I am honored to be in your presence, Your Majesty. Please, consider this gift, not as a challenge but as an offering of friendship." A soft hum filled the hall. Elias looked up, startled. The light patterns on the walls shifted, forming intricate shapes that seemed to respond to the tension in the room. The Zypheran's eyes glimmered with reflection. Even the guards, still unmoving, seemed to be attuned to the moment. For the first time, Elias realized the depth of Zephoran perception. They did not just see the gift, they felt it. They measured the intention behind it. And for a species that prided itself on logic, that was far more significant than any display of wealth or power. The Queen finally spoke, her voice low, melodic, and commanding. "You bring something strange," she said. "Something we do not fully understand." Elias lifted his head, hope rising. "Yes, Your Majesty. That is because it comes from what makes humans human. It is our courage, our care for one another, and our willingness to trust beyond fear. It is our way of connecting, even across worlds." Larintha remained silent, considering. Her eyes flickered briefly to the court, then back to him. There was a pause so long that Elias feared he had misjudged everything. And then finally she reached out, not to touch the gift, but to lift the cloth slightly, inspecting it. Her touch was delicate, almost reverent. She did not speak. She did not move hastily. She simply observed, letting the weight of the moment settle around her. Elias rose slowly, keeping his hands at his sides. Every fiber of his being was alert. He understood the significance of her silence. In a culture that valued action, efficiency, and results above all else, the Queen's pause was not disinterest. It was contemplation, and that meant she was thinking, questioning, considering humanity in a way no Zephyrin had before. The court leaned forward, their usual composure shaken by the unexpected weight of human intention. Elias realized then that the gift had done what it was meant to do. It had created a space where curiosity and understanding could grow. The Queen finally stepped back, her eyes still fixed on the gift. "Human," she said, her tone measured. "You have brought more than a simple object. You have brought something we do not yet have words for. Perhaps we will understand it in time." Elias felt a wave of relief. That was all he needed for now. That acknowledgement, brief as it was, opened a door that had been closed for centuries. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said, bowing once more. "I am honored by your consideration." As he straightened, the light in the hall shifted again, painting golden reflections across the crystal floor. The Zypherans murmured softly among themselves, a sound that seemed almost like wonder. Elias allowed himself a small, quiet smile. Humanity had taken the first step. Outside, the shuttle waited to return him and the delegation. But Elias knew this journey was only beginning. One small gift offered with courage and care had begun to change the course of human history among the stars. And somewhere deep in the silence of the palace, Queen Larintha stood, completely still, holding in her hands a human gift that spoke in ways words could never reach. The moment lingered, heavy and fragile, yet full of possibility. The throne room remained quiet long after Elias had returned to his place. Queen Larintha sat in her crystalline chair, her silvered fingers still lightly touching the gift. The device was small, nothing compared to the grand treasures of Zephora, Yet its presence seemed to fill the hall with a different kind of power, a quiet human kind of power that the queen could not yet name. The court looked on in restrained fascination. Zifferans were accustomed to displays of technology, dominance, or cunning. They had never encountered a gift like this. Its meaning was not obvious, yet it commanded attention, not through force, but through its promise of something deeper. For the first time in centuries, the court felt something unfamiliar. Curiosity without expectation, intrigue without obligation. Elias watched from a short distance. His hands were folded respectfully, but inside, his heart raced. The queen's silence was long, almost unnerving, but he knew it was significant. In a society that prized immediate comprehension, hesitation was rare and meaningful. Larintha's stillness was not indecision, it was thought. The human gift had caused her to pause, to consider, and perhaps even to question. Finally, the queen's amber eyes moved from the device to Elias himself. She studied him as though he were a puzzle, one piece at a time. "Human," she said, her voice low and melodic, "your gift. It is unlike anything we have encountered. It does not serve the usual purposes. It does not gain power, inspire fear, or even display knowledge. Yet it holds significance." Elias nodded. He had prepared for this, for a moment like this, where words could carry as much weight as the gift itself. "Your Majesty," he replied, "it is meant to show who we are, not as warriors or conquerors, but as a species capable of understanding, of feeling, and of caring for one another. It is a way to share our strengths that cannot be measured in power or technology." The queen leaned back slightly, her gaze returning to the device. She reached out again, fingertips hovering over the surface without touching it. The court remained still, the silence stretching into a weight that could almost be felt. For a moment, Elias wondered if the Zifferans were truly capable of perceiving what he had tried to convey. But then, the subtle flicker in the queen's eyes told him that they were. Why would a species choose such weakness? Larintha finally asked. Her words were careful, precise. "You place yourselves at risk by valuing connection over efficiency. You depend on others and yet you endure. You survive in ways we do not fully understand." Elias felt a flicker of hope. She was not dismissing the gift. She was questioning it, probing it, and that was far more meaningful. "Your Majesty," he said gently, "it is because we understand something that many others overlook. True strength is not only in survival or conquest. True strength is in trust, in empathy, and in hope. Humans thrive not just because of our technology, but because we value each other." The queen tilted her head slightly. "Hope and trust? Fleeting concepts," she murmured. "Yet you speak of them as if they are tangible." "They are," Elias said with a steady conviction. "They are the foundation of our greatest achievements. When humans cooperate, even against overwhelming odds, we accomplish things no individual could do alone. We protect one another, not because we must, but because we choose to. And it is that choice that makes us resilient, even in the face of danger." A faint ripple passed through the court. The attendants exchanged glances, some curious, some puzzled. Humans were not meant to be understood, at least not fully. They were inefficient, emotional, unpredictable. Yet here was one, standing calmly, presenting a truth that could not be ignored. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly, her expression unreadable. She spoke again, this time more softly. "Show me, human. Show me how this choice, this trust, allows your species to endure." Elias felt a surge of determination. This was the moment he had been preparing for, the chance to demonstrate the depth of humanity in a way no alien could misunderstand. He reached into the satchel at his side and carefully removed the device, placing it on a small pedestal in front of the queen. "It is simple to operate," he explained, "but its effects are profound. It allows one to experience our memories, our connections, our acts of courage and care. It is not a weapon, nor a tool of power. It is a reflection of what humans value most. The queen's amber eyes focused on him. Her head tilted slightly, a gesture of patience and command. "Proceed," she said. Elias activated the device. A soft glow spread across its surface, growing brighter until it filled the space around them. Images appeared, not as holograms, but as feelings, memories, and sensations. The court watched, and even the queen's usually stoic face showed the faintest flicker of intrigue. He shared the memory of a human rescue mission on a distant colony. Men and women risking their lives in a violent storm to save children trapped in a collapsing building. The court could see the danger, the coordination, the fear. But what stood out was the humans' determination to help one another, even when their own lives were at risk. Next came a memory of a team of humans repairing a starship stranded in deep space. Alone and far from home, they worked tirelessly, sharing laughter, encouragement, and sometimes tears, until the ship was safe again. The sense of cooperation, of shared purpose, filled the throne room in a way the queen could not have anticipated. The final memory was of a child learning to read, surrounded by friends and family, each supporting and celebrating one another's progress. Elias knew the small, everyday acts were as powerful as the extraordinary ones. They revealed a truth Zephorans rarely considered. Humans were strong because they cared, not despite it. The queen remained silent, her eyes fixed on the glowing device. Her body language, usually so controlled, seemed to soften. She did not move to stop the images, nor did she gesture to dismiss Elias. Instead, she absorbed it all, letting the human experiences wash over her in a way that words could never capture. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. The court shifted, unsettled, by emotions they could not quantify and yet unable to turn away. The queen finally reached out and lifted the device slightly, examining it as if she were holding a key to a world she had never imagined. "Why?" she asked softly, almost to herself. "Would your species risk so much for one another, when safety is easier, when selfishness ensures survival?" Elias stepped closer, keeping his voice calm. "Because we have learned that life is richer when we choose connection over isolation. We have learned that trust and courage allow us to achieve more than fear or calculation ever could. And above all, we have learned that the bonds we form define who we are more than our strength or skill alone." A subtle change came over the queen. She straightened, her posture still regal, but a hint of warmth appeared in her gaze. She looked at the human in front of her, not with suspicion, but with curiosity and respect. "Human, you bring more than a simple gift. You bring a perspective we have not considered. Perhaps there is something to your way of being that is admirable." Elias felt his chest tighten with relief. This was more than he had hoped for. The queen's acknowledgement, however tentative, was a victory. Humanity had begun to be seen, not as primitive or naive, but as something uniquely capable of inspiring change. He bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. It is all we hope for. To be understood, and perhaps, one day, trusted." The queen's eyes returned to the device, lingering there for a long moment. "You have made me consider something different, something we cannot measure in strategy or science. Perhaps humans possess a quality that even we lack." Elias understood then that the seed had been planted. The queen's silence, her hesitation, was no longer empty. It was fertile ground for understanding, for dialogue, and for the possibility of something greater. Humans had shown their strength not through power but through courage, empathy, and trust, qualities Zephorans had rarely valued in themselves. As the throne room slowly returned to its usual quiet, Elias remained standing, hands at his sides watching the queen. He knew the journey had just begun. One simple act, one small gift had opened a door that might change the fate of humanity and Zephora forever. And in that silence, Queen Larintha stood, completely still, holding a human gift that had no immediate value in her world, yet carried the potential to transform it. The human had spoken without force. The human had acted without threat. and in return the queen had paused, perhaps the greatest acknowledgement a human could ever receive from an alien ruler. The court remained silent, the weight of what they had witnessed settling in. Elias could feel the shift, subtle but undeniable. Something had changed, and though the path ahead was uncertain, it was filled with possibilities. Outside the palace, the sun of Zephora dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows that glimmered across the crystal spires. Inside, the queen continued to examine the small human device. The silence lingered, yet it was no longer empty. It was full of thought, of consideration, and perhaps of respect. Elias left the throne room that day with a quiet sense of accomplishment. Humanity had been seen. Humanity had been heard. And the first step toward bridging worlds had been taken. The next morning, the throne room of Zephora felt different. Where it had once been a place of intimidating silence, it now carried an air of cautious anticipation. Word of the human gift had spread quickly through the palace. Attendants, guards, and advisors moved with a quiet curiosity, casting glances at the small device that rested on the pedestal before Queen Larintha. Elias Drake entered the hall with measured steps. His hands were empty, but his presence carried the confidence of someone who had prepared for this moment all his life. He had spent months not only crafting the gift, but also learning how to convey its purpose clearly to beings whose culture was so different from his own. Today, he would show them what humans could truly do. The queen's amber eyes followed him as he approached. Larintha remained seated on her throne, her posture rigid yet expectant. She had not spoken since the previous day's meeting, but her gaze held something new. Curiosity. Elias knew he had captured her attention. Now, it was time to demonstrate the depth of humanity. "Your Majesty," Elias began, bowing slightly, "you asked yesterday why humans risk so much for one another. You asked how we endure when caution might seem wiser. Today I will show you." He reached into his satchel and carefully lifted the device, placing it at the center of the hall. A soft hum filled the space as he activated it, sending a gentle glow across the floor. The device projected not images in the usual sense, but memories and emotions, human experiences carefully recorded to convey not just events, but the feelings behind them. The queen's gaze narrowed and the court leaned forward, unable to tear their eyes away. Elias began with a memory from a distant human colony on a harsh frozen planet. The scene unfolded around the observers. Humans were seen struggling through biting wind and snow, attempting to repair a damaged life support system. One man slipped, nearly falling into a chasm of ice, but another grabbed him, saving him from certain death. The memory pulsed with fear, determination, and trust. The court could feel the tension and relief, the silent bond between the humans who refused to let one another fail. Elias watched the queen's reaction carefully. Her eyes, usually so controlled, softened slightly. The subtle rise and fall of her shoulders suggested a recognition, not of the danger itself, but of the choice humans made to protect each other, despite the danger. Next came a memory of humans, in space, repairing a starship stranded far from home. They were exhausted, hungry, and far beyond the safety of familiar territory, yet they worked together tirelessly. When one stumbled, another reached out. When fear threatened to take hold, laughter and encouragement broke through. The memory conveyed more than teamwork. It conveyed humanity's belief in the value of life, the commitment to others, and the courage to act even when odds seemed impossible. Queen Larintha remained silent, but her posture shifted imperceptibly. Her hands rested on the armrests of her throne, fingers flexing slightly. She was not used to feeling something without reason, something that could not be measured by calculation or logic. Yet the human experiences unfolding before her revealed a power that did not rely on strength, speed, or intelligence alone. Finally, Elias selected a memory of smaller, everyday human acts, children helping one another learn, neighbors sharing, food in times of scarcity, people risking embarrassment to comfort a friend. The court watched, and even the queen seemed drawn into the simple, quiet strength of these actions. It was impossible to ignore the impact. Humans valued each other in ways that Zypherans rarely did. Their bonds were invisible, but their effects were profound. The room remained filled with the soft glow of the device. Elias stepped closer to the queen, his voice calm but firm. "These are the moments that define us, Your Majesty. Humans endure because we trust, because we care, because we choose to act for others. We are not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the cleverest in all things, but we are capable of things your species may not imagine: cooperation, courage, and empathy. These are our greatest strengths." The queen's silence was longer than before. Her amber eyes were fixed on the glowing device, reflecting the flickering light like molten gold. Her body, so accustomed to controlled posture, seemed to relax minutely, as if she were considering the human words not as facts but as a revelation. A whisper ran through the court. Zypherans were not accustomed to witnessing emotions as tangible forces. They were used to seeing strategy, dominance, and intelligence expressed outwardly. Yet here was something else: connection, purpose, trust. It was subtle, yet undeniable. Lyrintha finally spoke, her voice low but resonant. "Human, you present these acts as if they are strength, but they are weakness in our terms. Why do you value them above your own safety?" Elias met her gaze directly. "Because, Your Majesty, safety alone cannot sustain a species. Power without care is hollow. Technology without compassion is cold. Humans survive, thrive, and build civilizations not through fear, but through hope, trust, and courage. These things do not make us weak. They make us unpredictable, resilient, and sometimes unstoppable." The queen's amber eyes flickered with something unfamiliar: consideration. She gestured to the court, and for the first time they leaned back, giving space to thought rather than protocol. Lyrintha's posture softened further. Her body language conveyed that she was not only absorbing the memories, but she was beginning to understand them on a deeper level. Elias lowered his voice, speaking gently, as if sharing a secret meant only for the queen. "Your Majesty, humans have faced countless dangers, countless enemies. Yet we have survived because we trust each other, because we value our bonds. That is why we are here today. Not to conquer, but to connect, to build bridges that others cannot see." The queen's gaze shifted back to the device. She reached out, fingertips brushing lightly against its surface, feeling the faint hum of the memories within. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the emotions it carried. She was silent, but the subtle changes in her expression were unmistakable. Curiosity, understanding, and perhaps respect. "Human, your species, it is unlike what we believed," she said softly. "We judged you by what you lacked, by what we thought you could not do. Yet your actions, your choices, they reveal a power we have not seen before. Perhaps there is more to your species than logic and survival alone." Elias felt a surge of hope. This acknowledgement, however tentative, was significant. The queen had not dismissed him. She had considered him. She had considered humanity. And that was the first step toward trust, toward connection. He bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. That is all we hope for. Understanding, recognition, and perhaps, one day, friendship." The glow of the device slowly faded as Elias deactivated it. The court remained quiet, absorbing the impact of what they had witnessed. The queen's eyes lingered on the pedestal, not with command, but with thought. She had been shown something new, something that could not be measured in crystals or energy, but in the choices and hearts of a distant species. Lyrintha rose from her throne. Her movements were deliberate, precise yet softer than before. She approached Elias, her gaze unwavering. "Human, you have demonstrated what we cannot yet fully comprehend. Yet even in its mystery, it is clear that your species possesses qualities that are Extraordinary? Perhaps. In time we will learn more. Elias bowed again, a small smile of relief and respect on his face. Your Majesty, that is all we ask. That our presence, our intent, and our choices be considered, not as primitive or simple, but as worthy of attention. The Queen's gaze returned to the glowing pedestal one last time. Then with a subtle motion she gestured for the court to step back. Today, you have done more than display a gift. You have opened a door. The future may yet reveal its significance. Elias felt a sense of accomplishment, tempered with the awareness that this was only the beginning. Humanity had made its presence known, not through force or threat, but through courage, empathy, and trust. He had shown the Queen that humans were more than what Xiferans had imagined. The court slowly returned to its normal positions, but there was a difference now. The atmosphere was no longer rigidly formal. There was a spark of curiosity, a sense that something had shifted. Elias could feel it. Humanity had planted a seed that, given time, might grow into understanding, alliance, and respect across the stars. As the sun of Xiphora dipped behind distant spires casting long shadows across the crystalline halls, Queen Larintha remained silent, considering the human gift once more. Her body was still, yet her mind was alight with thoughts that would take days, perhaps weeks, to fully comprehend. Elias left the throne room that day knowing that humans had not only survived this encounter, they had made a mark. The gift had achieved its purpose. Through empathy, courage, and understanding, humans had begun to bridge the vast gulf between their species and the Queen of Xiphora. And somewhere deep in the silence of the palace, Queen Larintha stood, completely still, holding in her mind the human gift and the extraordinary strength it revealed. The palace of Xiphora was unusually quiet that morning, yet there was an undercurrent of energy in the air. Queen Larintha had spent the night reflecting on the human gift, replaying the memories Elias had shared. Something about it stirred a curiosity she had never experienced before. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but not in a way that seemed chaotic. Their actions, their choices, their willingness to care for one another. It suggested a form of strength that Xiferans had never truly valued. Elias entered the throne room, carrying nothing but himself and his calm confidence. The Queen's amber eyes met his immediately. Unlike yesterday when her silence had been tentative, today there was a subtle acknowledgement in her gaze. She was ready to engage, to explore the ideas he represented. Human, Larintha said, her voice steady yet curious. Yesterday, you shared your memories. You showed us your courage and your care for one another. But can your species truly embody these qualities in ways that influence others? Can you make this contagious? Elias nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. Humans inspire through example, not with command or authority, but through action. When one human acts with courage or kindness, it can ripple through communities, even across worlds. It is our choice to connect that makes us strong. The Queen considered his words, then stood from her throne. Her presence filled the room, commanding yet less rigid than before. Then show me, she said. Show us this influence. Let us see how humans can shape more than themselves. Elias stepped forward and activated the device once again. The soft hum of energy spread across the room, illuminating the crystal floors and walls. Memories of humans working together to overcome disaster flowed into the space. One depicted a settlement on a harsh desert planet, threatened by violent storms. Humans constructed shelters, shared resources, and coordinated rescue efforts, saving lives while demonstrating patience and ingenuity. Another memory showed humans in a diplomatic mission on a neutral planet, negotiating peace between two alien species on the verge of war. It was not technology or brute force that resolved the conflict, but understanding, compromise, and empathy. Humans listened, humans cared, and through these simple acts, they prevented catastrophe. The Queen and her court watched in silence. For many, the concept of emotions shaping outcomes was alien. In Xiphora, logic and power determined results, and the unpredictable nature of feeling was often considered dangerous. Yet these memories carried a force that could not be ignored. It was not the human strength, nor their weapons, nor their intelligence alone. It was their ability to act with care, to connect, and to inspire. Larintha's amber eyes softened, and for the first time, she allowed a faint gesture of approval. Her hand moved, delicate yet precise, as if she were acknowledging the truth unfolding before her. "Your species. It is unlike any other I have studied," she said. "You survive, thrive, and achieve, not through superiority, but through cooperation. And yet, you choose this path voluntarily?" Elias nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty, because we believe that the value of life lies not just in survival but in connection. We endure because we trust one another, even when it is dangerous or difficult. Our bonds are our strength." The Queen's gaze shifted to her advisors, who had begun to murmur quietly among themselves. Some exchanged skeptical glances, yet others seemed thoughtful. Humans were strange to them, imperfect, emotional, and unpredictable. But Elias could see the beginnings of understanding in their expressions. "Then perhaps there is merit in your ways," Larintha said. "We have relied on precision and control for millennia, yet your species demonstrates that unpredictability, guided by choice and care, may hold a power we have overlooked." Elias took a cautious step forward. "Your Majesty, if your people are willing, we could share more. Not just memories, but cooperation, methods, and understanding. We can build something together that neither species could achieve alone." The Queen regarded him for a long moment. She was a ruler who had faced countless threats, who had judged countless species. Yet here was a human offering not dominance, not submission, but partnership. It was a concept so foreign that she paused, letting its meaning settle in her mind. Finally, she nodded. "Very well, human. Show us more. Let us explore these connections. If what you say is true, it may redefine what our worlds can achieve." Elias activated the device again, this time projecting experiences not just of individual humans, but of humans interacting with one another and with other species. He displayed moments of courage, ingenuity, and empathy extending across different worlds. Humans were shown assisting alien civilizations, resolving conflicts and building communities that thrived through collaboration. The court watched, and slowly, the atmosphere shifted. Skepticism gave way to wonder. Larintha herself leaned closer to the pedestal, her eyes absorbing every detail. For the first time in centuries, she considered that humans might possess a strength Xiferans had never valued. "These acts," she said softly, almost to herself, "they are not guaranteed by logic. They are chosen, and yet they succeed." Elias stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. "Yes, Your Majesty. Humans choose to act even when it is risky. That choice is our power. It allows us to endure, to inspire, and to achieve more than any one individual or species could alone." The Queen studied him, her eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and contemplation. "Then your gift is not merely an object," she said. "It is a lesson. It is proof that choice, trust, and courage can shape reality in ways we cannot fully predict." Elias smiled. "Exactly, Your Majesty. And we hope to share that lesson, not just with you, but with your people as well. Together we can build understanding and perhaps something greater than either of our species has known before." Larintha's expression softened, her posture less rigid than ever. She raised her hand, signaling to her court. "Human, you have brought a perspective that challenges everything we know. Let us consider this carefully. We will observe, learn, and perhaps in time, act together." The human delegation exchanged quiet smiles. This was more than diplomacy, it was recognition. Humanity had begun to bridge the gap between two vastly different worlds, not through dominance, but through understanding, courage, and empathy. Elias bowed slightly, his heart steady despite the enormity of the moment. Thank you, Your Majesty. That is all we ask. Understanding, consideration, and the chance to work together. The Queen's gaze returned to the device one last time. She allowed herself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. It was a gesture of respect, acknowledgement, and perhaps even admiration. Humans had demonstrated a form of strength Zephorans had overlooked for millennia. Then we begin, she said softly. We begin a new path. One guided not only by power and logic, but by choice, trust, and the courage to act for others. Outside the throne room, the sun of Zyphora cast golden light across the crystal spires, reflecting in patterns that seemed almost alive. Within, a new understanding had begun to take root. Humans had shown their strength not in weapons or strategy, but in their courage, empathy, and willingness to act for the benefit of others. Elias left the throne room that day knowing that a bridge had been built. It was fragile, yes, and uncertain, but it existed. Humanity had not only survived in the eyes of the Queen, they had impressed, intrigued, and inspired her. And somewhere deep within the palace, Queen Lyrintha stood, her eyes lingering on the human gift. She was no longer silent in confusion. She was silent in thought, contemplation, and the recognition that humans had introduced a strength Zyphorans had never seen, and perhaps had never expected to see. For the first time, the palace of Zyphora felt not only powerful but open to change. The Queen's silence was no longer emptiness, it was a beginning. The palace of Zyphora had never felt quite like this before. Where once the halls had been filled with rigid formality and silent authority, there was now a subtle hum of curiosity, anticipation, and, surprisingly, hope. Queen Lyrintha walked among her court, her mind alive with thoughts she could not fully articulate. The human, Elias Drake, had introduced an idea, a perspective, that challenged centuries of tradition. Your Majesty, Elias said, stepping forward, if your people are willing, we can begin sharing more than memories. We can share understanding, cooperation, and experience. Together, humans and Zyphorans could achieve things neither species could do alone. The Queen regarded him with her deep amber eyes, eyes that now reflected not just curiosity but consideration and trust. Human, she said, her voice calm yet commanding, your species has demonstrated qualities that are rare even among the stars. Courage, empathy, and choice. These are the strengths that shape your world. If we accept your guidance, we may find our own paths enriched. Elias nodded, understanding the weight of her words. This was no longer a simple diplomatic exchange. This was the beginning of a new era, a moment where two civilizations might forge a future built on respect, understanding, and mutual growth. The Queen gestured to her advisors, who had gathered nearby. You have witnessed the humans' gifts. Consider what we may learn. Observe not only the tools but the principles. Trust, courage, and connection are not weaknesses, they are power. For many of the Zyphorans, this was difficult to grasp. Their culture valued calculation, logic, and efficiency above all else. Yet the human had shown them that power could also lie in unpredictability, compassion, and choice. As they watched Elias demonstrate more human memories, moments of diplomacy, cooperation, and quiet heroism, the court began to understand the profound potential of these qualities. Elias projected a memory of a human mission to aid an alien species in need. The humans had faced danger, uncertainty, and great personal risk, yet they acted without hesitation. They organized, shared knowledge, and inspired courage. The Zyphorans saw not just action, but intention. They felt the humans' hope and empathy, and even the Queen seemed moved by it. This is remarkable, Lyrintha said softly. Your species demonstrates influence without domination, inspiration without force, and yet your actions have consequence. You shape reality not by control, but by choice. Yes, Your Majesty, Elias replied. Humans choose to act in ways that uplift, protect, and unite. It is not always easy, but it is always meaningful. The Queen moved closer, her hands brushing lightly against the pedestal holding the device. She studied it, her mind racing with possibilities. Then perhaps we have underestimated the value of human choice. We have relied too heavily on calculation and predictability. Perhaps there is merit in your unpredictability, your willingness to risk for others. Elias bowed slightly. We hope that our example can guide, not command. That by sharing our experiences, your species may see the strength and values that cannot be measured by technology or strategy alone. The Queen considered him for a long moment. Then, with a decisive gesture, she extended her hand. Human, we accept your presence, your guidance, and your principles. Let us explore together, not as teacher and student, but as allies seeking understanding. Elias's chest tightened with emotion. This was the moment he had worked toward, not victory through force, but recognition through respect. He extended his hand in return, and the Queen's gesture, though subtle, was a seal of trust. In that small motion, humanity and Zephora had begun a partnership that could reshape the galaxy. Over the following hours, Elias shared more human experiences with the court. He demonstrated how humans build communities, resolve conflicts, and inspire others to act courageously. Zypherans, once skeptical, began to ask questions, to discuss, and even to experiment with new approaches. The palace buzzed with the quiet energy of minds expanding, of traditions being reconsidered, and of hope taking root. The Queen herself began to respond in ways previously unimaginable. She instructed her advisors to consider new policies, encouraged cooperation with neighboring species, and even invited human observers to participate in strategic discussions. Larintha had realized that human strength lay not in technology or weapons, but in their ability to inspire trust, foster unity, and make choices that shaped the future. As the day wore on, the palace corridors seemed brighter. The once rigid atmosphere had softened, replaced by curiosity and cautious optimism. Humans and Zypherans moved together, exploring ideas, sharing perspectives, and learning from one another. Elias felt the thrill of witnessing history unfold, not through conquest but through understanding. Outside the palace, the sons of Zephora set, casting long golden beams across the crystalline spires. Elias looked out at the horizon, imagining Earth far across the stars, and felt a quiet pride. Humanity had not only survived this encounter, they had transformed it. They had shown that courage, empathy, and trust could bridge worlds, and in doing so, they had planted the seeds of a lasting alliance. The Queen returned to her throne as night fell, but she did not resume her usual stern posture. She held the human device in her hands, turning it thoughtfully, and for the first time allowed herself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. The gift had achieved its purpose. It had demonstrated that the human way, strange, unpredictable, and deeply emotional, was a strength Zypherans could admire and perhaps even emulate. Larintha spoke softly to herself, yet Elias could hear her. Your species carries a light we have not known. Perhaps together we may learn to illuminate the galaxy. Elias bowed deeply, knowing that the Queen's acknowledgement was more powerful than any treaty or declaration. Trust had been earned, respect established, and understanding had begun to flourish. This was a moment that would be remembered for generations. In the days that followed, the human delegation worked closely with Zephyran officials. They shared knowledge, offered guidance, and demonstrated the value of cooperation and empathy in practical ways. Small projects, joint missions to assist neighboring planets, collaborative research, and cultural exchanges were initiated. The Zypherans observed, learned, and gradually began to adopt some human approaches. Through it all, Queen Larintha remained engaged, thoughtful, and surprisingly receptive. She asked questions, encouraged dialogue, and allowed Elias and his delegation to take the lead in shaping joint initiatives. Her initial skepticism had transformed into curiosity, then respect, and finally into a willingness to consider humanity as a partner rather than a primitive observer. Elias felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. Humans had proven themselves not through aggression or power, but through courage, empathy, and choice. They had inspired change, reshaped perceptions, and forged connections that could last for centuries. Humanity had shown the galaxy that true strength lay not only in technology or strategy, but in the ability to trust, to care, and to act with courage even when the odds were uncertain. And in the quiet of her throne room, Queen Larintha reflected on what she had learned. The human gift lay open before her, not merely an object, but a symbol of a new way of thinking. The gift had brought more than curiosity. It had brought understanding. Perhaps, she whispered to herself, we have much to learn from them, and much to gain. As the first stars appeared in Zephora's night sky, Elias gazed out at the horizon once more. He thought of Earth, of the humans who had inspired this journey, and of the countless possibilities that lay ahead. Humanity's courage and empathy had crossed light years, reached an alien queen, and transformed her perception. The bridge between worlds had been built, and the foundation was strong. For the first time, humans were seen not as primitive, but as extraordinary. Their strength had been recognized, not in battle, not in conquest, but in their hearts, in their choices, and in their ability to inspire others to rise above fear and division. Queen Larintha returned the device to its pedestal, her mind alive with reflection and new purpose. She understood now that humans had given her more than a gift. They had given her insight into the true nature of strength, the power of connection, and the possibility of a future shaped by trust and courage. Elias left the palace that night, with a calm satisfaction. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not through force, but through the qualities that made them human: empathy, courage, and hope. And somewhere in the quiet halls of Zephora, the queen stood, silent yet thoughtful, holding in her mind the human gift that had changed everything. The galaxy had witnessed a beginning, one that promised unity, understanding, and a new era of cooperation. Through a small gesture, a gift, and the courage to act, humans had proven their extraordinary value to an alien civilization. And in doing so, they had opened the doors to a future filled with endless possibilities.